have
everyone
a process where you just...
joining us at the BUEA board meeting today on this hot day. At least we're inside and in the air conditioning, that's all. And also I want to thank everybody for moving the meeting from last week to this week, so I appreciate that. I was gone last week, so I appreciate you doing that. We'll start off with roll call. Paul?
Paul Edge.
Julie Donham?
Karin St. John.
Jackie Yenna.
Kate Rosenberger. Mary Morgan.
Alex Crowley.
And our guest?
Steve Bryant with Ivy Tech.
Yep.
Oh, Laura McAllister, Flame Truck Project.
Okay. And Jane?
Jane Cooper Smith, staff.
All right, I think that's it. So, has everybody had a chance to read the minutes?
There were no minutes.
There were no minutes from the last meeting, so we will just pass over that. Yeah. Financial reports, do you want to go over those?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just dealing with my screen share here. All right, there's
Do we have anybody on remotely?
Yes,
We should take roll call there
Yeah.
too.
we have. Can I read them off, or do they need to identify?
Oh, just go ahead and read them off.
Okay. Larry Allen, City Legal, Julie Sylvester with the Dimension Mill, and Andy Lehman with the Dimension Mill, and then hand staff, which would be Gloria Colomb from the city.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you, welcome.
So for today's meeting, we're looking at April financials. Cheryl was out of town when the May bank statements and everything came in, so we don't have those prepared yet. You can see that, this is before much of the EZID revenue came in, so there is not a lot of activity in April. And that income really started to come in May. So we see almost $15,000 dollars in April for zone membership fees. We paid for the Dimension Mill zone day passes. We paid out one of our DEI anti-racism scholarships. And then we paid Lemonade Day for their activities. Sorry, this is a new computer and I'm not super handy with it yet. So total I don't understand what that total expenses line is reading out. Anyway, so Lemonade Day was special projects for $2,500. And then this shows income after those payouts was $10,273. A little interest income is shown at $81.78. Total income, again, $10,355 for that month. The balance sheet, which I actually meant to put first in the packet, shows total current assets at $2,360,252. I won't go through the details of where they are in the banks. And then this shows our notes receivable, which is again a blend of rapid response loan funds, rapid response loans, and then a few pre-existing of the BUEA loans. And the rapid response loans have started coming in. Some have been paid in full, and then some will be entering repayment. They were supposed to start June 1, but we're a little behind and in communication with borrowers actively now about that. So total liabilities and equity put us at $2,671,919. And then Cheryl did prepare us the budget versus actual, and this is great.
And the budget is for the whole year.
For the whole year, so we're comparing, January through April against the entire year's worth of expenses. So, it shows the scholarships I just mentioned. It shows one zone arts grant that was paid out against a commitment we made last year, and that's against the total $80,000 budget. It shows our insurance payout. I'm sorry, this scrolling on this is really weird. So, yeah, it's great. Any questions on these reports?
I just had a quick question on the on the January through April
After the balance sheet comes profit and loss,
Yeah.
January through April. It looks like only the expenses are on there. There's like no income.
Yeah, you're right.
So if you, yeah, trying to get that to scroll
sorry.
for
Yeah,
you.
I'm really having trouble with this.
That's
scrolling.
okay.
Is it not?
So it's this next document that really only is, it starts with expenses. It doesn't have any income on it.
Yeah, I noticed that too. So I think that's because we haven't budgeted, we don't have an income budget, right? That's what we discussed last time.
Well, we should know what we thought was gonna come in for the year, and that's what should be on this budget.
Right. And also
Against
it's
our EZIT income.
Be-
our
Yeah,
actual-
because the
okay.
actuals aren't on here either.
Yeah.
It's just missing the, when she ran it, she, for whatever reason, it did not.
No, we completely talked about that, so I'll request that for the next month.
Yeah. So, but the title, profit and loss budget versus actual, it's really not a P&L.
Yeah,
So I think she just toggled it wrong on her when she created the report.
okay.
And it left off the whole income section.
So what's the net ordinary income line?
It's not, I don't know, that looks like it's just, that's just expenses. 7, 8, 9, yeah, that's just expenses.
That's just the
Yeah.
budget
Yeah.
for the year,
Yeah.
so.
Well, the 11,906 should be the actual,
That's the actual.
January through April,
Yeah.
compared to a budget total for the year of 331, but those are just expenses.
Right.
So that
So
net
just
ordinary income line is just a
Not,
mistake.
right.
Okay.
It's just the
Well,
reports.
it's not a mistake, but it's only half of it. Right.
Right.
Yeah, so, okay, I've made note of that correction. So with that in mind, Julie, I don't know if you want us to vote to approve or wait for the corrections.
So I would be in favor of approving the April 30th financial, but holding the budget stuff.
The cumulative year to date.
Yeah. And vote on it at another time. How does everybody feel about that?
It's fine. Yeah.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve just the April 30th balance sheet and income statement?
Motion approval.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Paul?
Aye.
Thank you.
You have to tally the people online, I guess.
No, there are no voters
No
online today,
voters, okay, so you're okay.
The roll call, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Roll call votes are fine,
Okay.
my understanding. Okay,
So do you then want to do director's report or skip to,
can we do that at the end?
yeah,
Okay. So then that moves us,
to new business?
yeah. And, that's Steve.
Yes.
Is first in line, and if, I think maybe your faster version and then questions, if that sounds good
Sure.
to Julie.
Mhm.
Okay,
Stand somewhere so they can see me?
Yeah.
Okay.
come over.
Well, thanks, good to see everybody. It's been a while since it wasn't online. Again, always thanks for your past support of the Cook Center at Ivy Tech and the Small Business Development Center. Give you a wrap up of what we did last year with the grant dollars. As you're pretty well aware, COVID was still hanging around. We did a whole lot of things by Zoom. Historically, we spend a lot of time working one-on-one with clients, particularly on the Small Business Development Center side. I think we said we worked with about 50 clients that we tracked. And those are just direct ones that we logged in there that we know we spent time talking to them about business planning, probably financial needs they had last year. We were part of their RRF group over the last couple of years, and we continue to do a lot of work pitching all the SBA, the state, and the local fiscal stimulus programs last year, and that was a lot of what we did. Consumed a lot of our time. Additionally, spent a lot of time working with the IU Hope project, the Kelly students that were helping companies that didn't have e-commerce capabilities with websites and Shopify platforms, and I think they did 600 projects statewide last year, but about 20% were in Monroe County. So that certainly touched some zone businesses. I don't have insight into how many were on that, but that's a lot of what we did. And then, as you know, we kind of pivoted last year to adding some more workshops that we led ourselves or partnered with others. Most of those were on the Grow with Google kind of platforms. We're now partnering Grow with Google through Ivy Tech and through the SBDC. So they provide online learning capabilities with Google platform all the time. That's kind of what we're going to do a lot of going forward. Mostly because that was a lot of the needs we had from businesses. They said, hey, we're fine with money because they got the SBA funds or they got state funds or local funds, and hey, I need help with digital marketing, or I need help, just resetting my budget and putting a plan together because I haven't done it in so long and I'm a small business. So that's a lot of what we did last year in terms of the value of what we did with zone businesses. Obviously, we worked with the mill quite a bit throughout the year, mostly virtual, but as the year went on, we did get to some in-person forums and webinars and in-person events and that kind of thing. Andy's probably on here, and Julie. They also spent some time working on some projects, as you might recall, for the Reboot project and for their Code IT Academy. Maybe Andy can comment, or Julie, on that a little bit while we're here.
Be able to unmute now.
Yep, actually, Jane, can you unmute Julie as well? Or is she able to come off?
She should be.
Yep.
Hi, Julie.
Hi, everyone.
Julie actually worked pretty closely with the last cohort that we did. So if Julie, if you want to speak to a little bit about what specifically the last cohort covered and how that went.
Okay, the spring cohort was over CompTIA Security Plus, which is a bit more of an advanced course talking about cybersecurity. And after the 10-week course, everyone who finished was able to receive a voucher for the exam cost, which is about $390 that it shows online. On top of that, they also had membership to the mill to use for study groups and to study on their own, as well as access to Ivy Tech and their career coaching assistants that they could make appointments with. And so we graduated 17 people from that class, 5 of whom were part of the Monroe County government office in the IT department. There were 5 of them that heard about the class and are studying to take the exam now to be certified in that. So we're happy with those results.
We also, over the course of the last, oh gosh, we've been doing this for a couple of years now. The Coded Academy, we've had 135 participants with 17% total having BUEA addresses, and almost 23% of this past spring cohort had addresses within the BUEA zone.
Thanks, Andy.
So any questions on last term's activity? As some of you may know, the contract went from, I don't know when we finally executed it last year, but it went through February of this year. So we kind of overlapped into this year a little bit. But that was covering the bulk of our activities for, at least for 2021. And historically, for those of you who are maybe newer to the zone board, I think we've been doing this 7 or 8 years. We've done a lot of it focused on one-on-one consulting and a little bit on workshops and things like that. And we're starting to move away a little bit from the one-on-one because during COVID, we were well compensated by the SBA for additional capacity. So now it's more much about education and training, and that's where Jane and Alex and I have talked a little bit. We kind of like to see ourselves in the future. So there's a proposal that basically lays that out. The SBDC side isn't even mentioned in that. It's all Cook Center / Ivy Tech, the career coaching and external outreach group that Adam Gross runs. So we would be working together to create training programs to deploy, throughout, certainly throughout the city, but also into the zone.
Your written report talks about promoting programs to the zone and Bloomington area businesses. Is the zone sort of covered as you market to Bloomington area businesses, or do you have okay.
Yeah. I mean, historically, we've had a small how to start a business guide, just your basics of, at a real high level, are you really ready to do this? What's the elements of a business plan? There's a full page ad, front inside cover on the zone being supportive of what we do. So people can kind of learn, hey, what is this thing that they see in there?
Yeah.
If they don't know anything about it, which a lot of people, don't.
Yeah.
And that shows that we're working collaboratively with those businesses and certainly marketing to them. Historically, we have probably, I think if I went through and really looked, it'd probably be about 250 businesses in the zone that were active with it at any one time.
Yeah.
You know, MSP, manufacturing, so obviously certain ones in the downtown core. Upland's a client, you know, half the companies in the mill are clients now.
Yeah.
So
Does Downtown Bloomington Inc. help promote?
they do, because I send stuff to Talisha
Okay.
all the time.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes. Yeah, we were pretty active in marketing all the fiscal stimulus programs, all the training that was out there, you know, through all the chamber newsletters. I mean, even externally in the communities around us, there was some overlap into that. But that's how we get the word out, because people don't know who we are
Yeah.
most of the time. Unless they're looking for us, they don't find us. They find us through you. I mean, honestly, probably 90%. I did note that, you know, one of the things Andy put in there was some of the demographic background of some of the, you know, minority and underserved communities. I just ran our report for our region, and we were almost 22% last year, which is about double what we normally are in terms of serving clientele. And 60% of our clients are in Monroe County, certainly in Bloomington. So that largest part of that underserved population is probably coming through us. We had a real good partnership with Carvin Thomas. I think many you know Carvin. We did some work with Jim Vance in the NAACP chapter last year to do some training at their national conference and videotape some stuff, and he's been using it for some of his help with some of their constituency too. So we're getting our word out there in the places where we should be that we don't normally get a lot of interest in what we do.
Steve, those numbers then are related to the Code IT Academy?
Yes,
Okay, gotcha.
those are specifically from his. That's
Got
kind of
it.
why I wanted to
Okay.
mention ours is about
Yeah.
22% for
Okay.
small businesses that we work with in our region.
Okay.
And historically, our region is based on our population demographics. That's kind of how our client flow kind of almost mirrors that. Other areas of the state, obviously, you know, that include Indy or Gary or others will have a higher African-American figure, for instance, in terms of client service, because that's who's in their region.
Okay. And I just had one more question, and thanks for this report, it's always really
Yeah.
interesting. On the customized business education, $30,000 component of the total, up to 15 workshops and training events. So I got a little lost on the individual versus group. So are
Yeah.
those group training events, or those aren't specific, just for?
It's a mix of both,
Okay.
because like the launching your own business that Terry always historically did, you know, she'd have 5 people sign up and 1 would show up. So it kind of becomes an individual. So it's just how we book it.
But it's open to, the 15
Yes.
that we would help fund are open to?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, and some of them might be in partnership with the mill or the chamber that are already planned. They're small business topics that we are also going to be part of. Good example, Mandy Miskowitz is going to be on the chamber's I think it's their July webinar on, how to market your business better, basically.
And my last question, this is probably true, but do we get promoted to BUEA when you do those events as a sponsor? Okay.
Yes.
I haven't been one. So
I know.
should have done one.
Exactly.
So this is a move from last year where we kind of acquired equipment to be used and some stuff like that. This is more now training type.
On our side, yes.
Yes.
I think on Andy and his colleagues' side, I think they were focused on getting computers for everybody to use for Reboot and their Code Academy.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll let Andy
Yeah,
comment on his for this year too. But
Yeah, no, you're spot on, Steve. I think some of it is used for upgrading and purchasing computers for these folks to be able to use during the classroom time as well as covering some of our other costs to run the program.
Any other questions for Steve? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So I have a question actually for Larry.
Yeah,
I think
okay.
I had to do this last year. So I'm on the board of the mill,
Okay.
and I think this 15,000 is going to benefit the mill. And so I think Larry said last time, well, I think I remember what he said, but we'll see what he says.
Yeah, so typically if there's a direct financial conflict, we ask people to recuse, but we have followed the city council standard in the past as well, which is to say that it can be disclosed if the person feels like they could vote fairly on it, then the board can kind of allow that. Although, just as best practice, we've asked anybody with a direct financial conflict, typically the best practice is to recuse.
And so Karen's is not a direct conflict, right?
That's correct. I mean, she's on the board, but it's not a direct influence for herself. It's not a paid position, correct, Karen?
Correct, it's a volunteer board position.
Yeah.
We have the quorum without Karen, so I think she can opt out without second.
Yeah, we do,
Yeah.
you can if you want to.
I don't need to because it doesn't benefit me, but I certainly would if the board would prefer that I did not.
I don't think you benefit from it, but,
All right.
so. Can I have a motion to approve the funding, the $45,000 funding?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Steve.
Thank you very much. as always.
Thanks, Steve.
Appreciate
Thank
the
you.
support.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, well, Julie, you're leading us
No,
through.
that's
I was
no,
just
you
scrolling
go-
down.
You can go ahead. The next thing is a People's Market Vendor Fest scholarship. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
and Lauren McAllister is here to talk to us about this today. So there are multiple projects happening to activate the zone near the Banneker Center and the Butler Gardens. I think it's really exciting that your energy is behind these projects to bring gardening and direct access to affordable and in many cases free food to the neighborhood. So correct me if I get the organizations wrong, but People's Market has applied for Vendor Fest through the Parks Department to activate the Butler Park Community Gardens parking lot. So that's the parking lot way on the west side of the park. So adjacent sort of to where Girls Inc. used to be. That parking lot is empty very often, and so People's Market and Lauren had the idea to bring 6 events that would bring, I think, 10 vendors per
10
event.
to 12.
10 to 12 vendors per event. And at those events, the vendors may have the opportunity to directly sell to people who come to the market, but People's Market will also use it as a platform to give away their free sponsored CSA boxes. So there are multiple layers of community good happening at that time. And Parks is in support of it. However, their accommodations for nonprofits are only a $10 a day reduction in fees. So the average daily fee that was assessed to People's Market the total due is $32.50. The average fee per event is $542, and this ends up being prohibitive for them as a nonprofit who's doing food access, food justice, and many other types of important work. So when Lauren asked me if the BUEA would be able to support this because it's in the enterprise zone, the program that made the most sense to me was the anti-racism scholarship program. So even though this isn't singularly an educational event, People's Market is constantly doing outreach and education, whether it's about gardening and food access or racial justice. It is all part and parcel of all the activity that they do. So I'm suggesting in my memo that we support this program through a match of half of the fees. And I think that's the nuts and bolts of it. And Lauren, feel free to add anything you think I have missed.
Sure. I think, first of all, you're amazing. That's a lot of what I needed to say. But $500 for People's Market is 27 sponsored boxes. Bread, eggs, meat, dairy, and produce. So when we don't do that, right, we can just see that 25 of our boxes aren't going to be filled. So it's not necessarily that paying it is to pay the city back. It's so that we can continue to give out boxes unrestricted. When people ask and they give us the courage, right, to say, I need help, we want to meet it. And in that neighborhood, people are starting to just walk up, right? So now we're just giving out anything so that they feel confident that local food is available to them. And I think using the park as plant truck is because I'm working with Banneker. So I have a contract with the Banneker Center to run their garden club and changing it to Banneker Urban Farm.
Mhm. That's cool.
You excited? I'm excited.
But that's a separate
Mhm.
project and arrangement, but that's just to illustrate the activities that are happening in that corner of the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it benefits Banneker that we're there, and it also benefits the city that we're utilizing a park every Saturday. But particular, the Vendor Fest is about drawing together people who don't traditionally have access to local food. All of our vendors are getting bought out, right? So people come and they pay, and that's great. But we're buying out the vendors and then redistributing it every single day. So offering
I didn't
this.
articulate that, but that's secondary sales and security for those farm vendors. So that has a direct economic impact, but they're not necessarily located in the zone, but that's like a collateral good.
Because they bring it to the zone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And make a priority for us to ensure that people in the neighborhood know that it's available to them for free. And so we do have nonprofit status, but like Jane mentioned, the discount isn't significant enough for us.
So why are they charging? I mean, this is a great program. Why are they charging?
That's an excellent question.
I think the program sounds great, and I think it benefits zone residents, obviously, but why are we paying the parks?
I've talked to them about this a little bit, and I think the way I would answer that is just to say this situation has highlighted a discrepancy in the way we handle licensing. ESD handles licensing fees for nonprofits. Public Works handles event fees for nonprofits, and then the way Parks is handling fees for nonprofits. So I sort of see today's request as a Band-Aid that will help this event go on through the season. And then I think there's legwork behind the scenes where there needs to be some interdepartmental communication about how we're assessing fees for nonprofits. And I think that'll be a longer communication with Parks that might be somewhat challenging, but it's clear that there's a disconnect between how ESD and Public Works are handling nonprofits and how Parks is. But Parks,
It seems to me if there's a parking lot that's not being used and we're gonna drive in 6 trucks to buy out food and pass out boxes, there should be no fee for that.
yeah.
Will there be farmers selling?
Mm-hmm.
So it is a farmer's market.
I thought you said you were gonna buy out, I'm sorry.
No,
That-
I was
Both
getting
of those things
confused
are
too.
happening at once. Neither of you are
Okay.
incorrect. Yes, we are encouraging, right, people to come and to buy the food on site. But to give confidence to our farmers, whatever isn't sold, People's Cooperative Market buys and then redistributes. So both things are happening, and that's where the fees come in. They're like, you can't make money here, right?
It's a farmer's market.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and if I can switch, I think if Parks were here, the way they would respond to the question about why they're assessing fees, they operate on a different financial model than the rest of the city, and their strategy or their obligation is to have a break-even operation, and so they charge for services in a way that they feel leads them to that point. And so I think they are assessing these fees because they believe this is part of their financial model that they've committed to. So that's why I'm thinking the conversation on the city staff side that really doesn't involve the BUEA is longer and more in-depth.
I think they would also say, and we've run into this when our department has tried to do something with them, which is they get so many requests, right, that for all sorts of different things, whether it's this kind of thing or whatever it is, right, that they kind of have to standardize and avoid the exceptions over and over again. Otherwise, it's unmanageable. So I think but to Jane's point, I think it does call for a review of maybe are things set correctly, but I think Parks in particular, given the scope of their operations, has to just have a kind of rule set that applies, and then causing exceptions just creates problems, because if you create an exception over here, then why aren't you creating it over there, and then it just sort of unravels. So I think it's the right way to go forward to have some sort of rule set that's applicable, but we should be having those background conversations to talk about what that what the costing looks like there.
Where do you come up with the other half of the money? Where does
Ha! Out of my pocket. Out of my pocket. We're just gonna have to take the hit because we've already established trust in the relationship with people who live there, and I'm not gonna just leave them high and dry. So People's Market will use our grant funding, our unrestricted grant funding that we got to fill boxes to pay the city to use a parking lot. You got it right. I don't want to get confused.
So when you say out of your pocket, you mean the nonprofit of the People's Market? Will pay?
No. The
No.
farmers will have to take more fees from them or something. Because this fee structure, when it says, an application fee, sure, but the permit per day and then the vendor fee times each vendor, we don't charge a vendor fee right now. So we'd have to charge one to the vendors who show up. Will they show up? Why would they show up if they have to pay a fee? So it's like the cascading effect will mean probably less vendors, and we won't get to distribute as much food.
Okay, so if the BUEA puts in half the money, is there a guarantee then that the other half will be met, or is it just we're gonna wait and see kind of situation?
Well, I'm hoping to negotiate with them about paying it each event, so that gives us a little more space to do fundraising. Juneteenth is happening, and so this Saturday in particular, we'll have more donations because of Juneteenth that will just go to pay this city fee. And I get it. I hear what you're saying about exceptions, but equity isn't an exception. No one's using this park. I asked them. I said, what y'all doing here this year? There are no plans. There are no programming happening at Butler Park at all for 2022. So again, it's not about exception. It's like, this is not used.
So I wonder, and I don't know what the costs are behind it. I don't know if they're incurring costs, like there's cleanup or setup, or they have to send out their personnel that they have to pay, or
We do all of that.
you all do all, okay. So $32.50 is your total bill for 6 events. Okay.
And you don't really know how many vendors
Right, because now I have to email them and say, hey,
you have to pay.
you need to pay to be here.
Or do they pay you now to be at the market at Woolery?
We aren't at Woolery.
Oh, that's not you. You
Absolutely
aren't Woolery.
not.
No, you're not that.
You
You're
haven't
not-
done this yet.
We have had one vendor fest because, what was it, last month? The third Saturday of every month, we had our first vendor fest last month.
How did you fund it?
It was not funded because we said to them, hold on, pump the brakes. Let's talk about this before I agree to this large amount.
Parks agreed to wait on the payment.
So I could fundraise or
And
something.
I think Julie, I think it was your question, was about what, or maybe it was yours, Karen, about what People's Market had done before, but you have you have 2 years of operating under, or
3
People's
years.
Market has, how many?
Almost 3, yeah.
Yeah, and so they were operating a market at, why can't I think of the name of the school? Harmony School, on weekends. So they've been doing this. They have customers who are dialed in to them and their communication. Like Lauren said, they have relationships in place. So it's not new. I think if Lauren puts it forward, it will happen and be successful, and they have an audience that they are in touch with.
Sorry, I had it mixed up with the other one.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I love to be differentiated.
Clearly, this has an educational component because you're introducing people to foods that they wouldn't normally, they're used to Kraft mac and cheese, and here they've got a bunch of squash.
And my favorite part is that then the vendors get to answer the questions. And so we get to redefine what the face of food looks like, right? Who's actually growing your food? Who's bringing it to you? And that's why I think it's such a benefit to the zone, because then there's an association with a larger community. And enterprise is important, but right now food is high in price.
Yeah.
So people coming out to get food and gathering together is a gift.
So, would those people, are they not going to a farmer's market now, or are they going to the city's farmer's market?
What
The customers that come, not the vendors, sorry, I'll be more clear. Would the shoppers who come to this market at Butler Park, are they not otherwise going to the city market a few blocks away already, or?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because I think it illuminates the idea that we're in competition when we're not. I'm gonna say it again. We are not in competition. We aren't doing the same thing. They're trying to sell food at a market price. I am trying to educate and inform people about the accessibility of local food. So sure, maybe they go there too, but we're really empowering people around a conversation around equity. When you come to People's Market, we are going to be talking about social and racial equity, and we're going to be challenging you through our sliding scale program to pay more than the price, or to take what you need, and to really, see your community, be out together. Yes, Janice.
I'm a customer in People's Market, so I just wanted to chime in to answer that too. I go to the People's Market because I believe in what they're doing more so than the other markets. So I don't go to any other ones. It's not a competition either. It's just because I just believe in them and I like how they do it. So I just I live in that neighborhood too. So anyway, I just wanted to put I like what they stand for and who it's run by, and so just to put that out there that they do have a really strong crowd of people that support them. And I try to donate when I can. So anyway, I just wanted to say, I go there and it has a strong crowd, so what Jane said is totally true. And I just wanted to talk about the equity thing too. I think that is really important to support the People's Market and what they're doing. And I think as a community and as a city, it's a little unfortunate about parks charging them, because I think it's true, we need to be doing more stuff. The only person of color in this room is Lauren right now, and I think that's an important thing to note. We need to be supporting our community members like Lauren, who are doing amazing, important work. So as a customer who wants fresh food, that's going above and beyond, I'm going to support you guys. So anyway, I just want to put in my 2 cents.
I like your 2 cents. I like your whole dollar.
So I use a different kind of farmer's market.
I don't even know if calling it a farmer's market would give it justice. Because the farmer's market defined in Indiana is just 2 farmers who set up together.
I will also, just to the point of competition, I think that probably it's challenging politically, because I think the city, in some respect, does view other farmers markets as competitors. In my former role at the chamber, I worked with one of the vendors at the Woolery Market to try to find a spot at Switchyard. And one of the reasons why that wasn't tenable to the city was because it was, why would we support other farmers markets if we have our own farmers market? So I think that's just out there.
The context,
The context. And so I fully support this. And I think that is just one of the challenges when discussing future waiving of fees, especially for this kind of work.
That's good to know too. So I'm just really understanding. It's really interesting. I didn't know that about. So it's a sliding scale when someone comes. So if someone doesn't have to pay, or they do pay,
or most of the time they pay above, which is our favorite part.
Or they pay above, which is great. Awesome.
Yeah.
So it is and that is made clear to everyone who comes to this market. So it really is different from, say, the market here or wherever, competition or not. In my mind, it was more of a proximity issue. If there's just one a few blocks away, why are we doing another one? But it's really not the same at all. It sounds like it's a very different model. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
So how do you attract the vendors that you need, and when there's already a market?
I love that question, because we assume that the market is serving everyone. It's not. So they come to People's Market because there's this model happening for a certain generation of farmers where they come and they set up every single Saturday. But basically everyone under 40 is that's too much. We can only do once a month if we're even available for that. And so this really meets the needs of this emerging farmer issue.
So if you're in the actual city market, you have to be there every week.
You get points if you, and you get dock points if you don't go.
Okay.
And then you can inherit points. We don't do any of that. We don't have a punitive system showing up at all.
So kind of flexibility is how you attract your vendors.
And ideology, right? So there are some vendors who are just I will not vend anywhere else.
I just want to add that it's 12:40 now, so.
I do have one comment. I'm in support of this too, and I could be even willing to support the full amount, and just as an idea I'm going to throw out there. But I'm not comfortable with the proposed budget line item, because when I remember when we budgeted that amount, and talked about what that was, it was actually, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the education you do there, but it was set up, and I just am curious if the board feels this way, maybe not, but it was scholarships for businesses to train their staff on DEI issues. And I understand the education you're doing, but to me, this fits more into our grant section of education or arts and culture, because it's also culture event organization to bring it there. So I would almost like to see it in either education or arts and culture, but I don't see it in is how we talked about the DEI scholarships.
Sure, every vendor at People's Market has to do DEI training.
But
So-
that's not the cost that we're reimbursing.
Right,
with this.
right.
That's not our line
So
item.
for me, yeah, so, and
Yeah,
so
to
that was the,
clarify.
yeah,
Exactly.
so when we're funding it so you can be there, it feels like we're more funding an entity to be there to do this really good work that fits, in my mind, under education or really even arts and culture. And I know we don't have a culture grant, which I'm now looking at. We have arts grants and facade grants and an art program.
No culture.
But it is something that would really add to the culture of
Right.
the neighborhood and really, quite frankly, a larger part of the BUEA, as well as education. I mean, you could argue it fits under resident education too. It's not a scholarship, but I would be interested if we could fund it somehow, but put it just in another line that's going to hit our budget as a negative. We'll go over budget on that, but we're going to be under on some other things,
Right.
and it all nets down okay.
And there's one of our arts grants today that we'll talk about later that sort of hits that cultural, where it's almost more of a cultural event. So it's interesting that you've observed that gap in our programming.
Yeah, I just wonder next year when we do the budget, we might not want to have a different.
Yeah.
And I thought we had some other line in here for things like this. I thought we talked about doing that, and I don't see it. So
We have
anyway,
a $500 miscellaneous, and Alex and I actually, when this came up, we're thinking maybe we need a larger miscellaneous category because some things do crop up throughout the year that are really valid and
Right.
contributing to the zone.
okay, I must be looking at an older version of the budget. I just don't see that. Like a miscellaneous grant.
You look on page 4.
Oh, I'm
of
looking
the
at
packet.
an expense,
Oh, you're
Yeah.
saying miscellaneous
In the budget.
expense.
Yeah.
but it's not a grant, no.
No, it would need to go under grants.
Okay.
But if we just came up with a new line that was something else, and it's gonna be a budget amount of 0.
Because the
Which is
miscellaneous
fine.
grants is the DEI, right?
Right.
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 I would also support fully funding it and, moving it to another line item, if we can make that happen.
Right, because I think what it says up there, grants miscellaneous, was not really what the budget said. The budget was DEI grants, as I
Right,
understand.
And I can have Cheryl change that.
Right.
Is
And
that right? I
think
think
that's
that is
true.
right, yeah.
What
Yeah, so
I,
that's not really the budget. But I would be in favor, and I'll wait till you're ready for a motion, but.
So my concern, I think this is a great program, and I'm not opposed to funding it also. If we fund half of it, I would like some way for it to know that it's gonna move forward, so, before we would fund everything. I just some clarification that it is gonna work, but if we fund all of it, it doesn't. But my problem is going forward, I mean, I look at this as a one-time thing, because going forward, I just don't see us paying the parks a fee for something like, I think it needs to be fixed. I don't know what you guys,
Yeah.
but it has to be, because why out of our pocket into their pocket? I mean, for a program that
Listen, we are
works.
100, okay?
Yeah.
I don't understand it at all. That's
Yeah.
why I'm here, to talk it through. Like, what does that really mean for y'all? Because we're hoping there'll be more programming going on in the
Right.
BUEA and specifically at the park. To be honest, there's a grant coming from the Indiana Department of Health where I will want to be distributing free food in the Parks Department. So not just at Butler, also at the Monroe County level, they want to set up a pavilion so People's Market can continue this work. And the Indiana Department of Health is giving us $800,000. So like, this is my prep work. Do you see what I'm saying? If I can work this out now, then we aren't running up against this for the next 2 years in my grant cycle, because that's going down.
That's great, congratulations
Yeah,
on the
that's
grant, that's huge.
So, is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved, right?
To fund the $3,250 for the People's Cooperative Market.
One time.
Second.
One
One
time.
time.
One time. I
Yeah.
agree.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And that we could, sorry, that we could fund it out of some other line.
Right.
Under grants, that's another.
Right.
I don't know where you decide to put it, but.
Yeah, I will report out at the next meeting.
Okay.
I have
Any
a-
opposed?
I have a plan.
Thank you for your
Yeah,
presentation.
yeah.
And thanks
Thanks
for your work,
It's
too.
not just me. It's a whole group of people, and
Yeah.
this really means a lot to them.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
I'm gonna go celebrate. Bye.
So we have the follow-up on the P&L. Should we rename grants miscellaneous to the DEI specifically?
Yes. Right.
And then
And then
create a
add
grants
a-
miscellaneous line?
Right.
That would have a zero budget amount and a negative balance based on this contribution. Is that the way to do it? Okay.
Thank you. I think that's going to have thanks Alex,
Yep.
a big impact for residents.
So we can't vote on this facade, or we still
You
have?
can. We have 6.
Okay.
I'm leaving in 5 minutes.
Okay, all right, let's go. So, do you want to move forward? We have a presenter?
Yes, Gloria. Sorry. Gloria Colon Brania is our, she's not new. I mean, been here as long as me, but it feels new since we're moving through COVID, is our historic preservation manager. And she'll talk to us today about the Johnson Creamery smokestack. And then we also have Blaine and Joe. Is that or is that Mike? I don't know everyone. Sorry. Okay, from Peerless.
So, good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, so the smokestack, where to begin? We've been in conversation with Mike and Blaine for about since the first day I arrived in the city, almost, regarding the smokestack and the Johnson Creamery and the site. There's a lot of sort of moving pieces, and the owners can talk a little bit more about that later. I just brought a timeline regarding the smokestack because the smokestack in and of itself has been kind of a complicated journey. There are a lot of moving pieces, hopefully none literally, and that's kind of why we are here.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Mary has to leave in
Yes, so
4 minutes.
Basic-
Do you think we can get to? Yeah, give us your.
okay,
best.
I'll give you the
Do you still
elevator.
have a quorum without me?
No, I don't think so.
I will give you the elevator pitch.
Great.
Smokestack leaning, that is bad, needs to go down to 60 feet. It's been a very long journey, and basically I, as the BHPC staff, really endorse giving them the full amount of $50,000 because just the careful lowering of the smokestack from 140 to 60 feet is going to be extraordinarily expensive. They're going to take it apart, they're not going to knock it down.
Julie, you had a question about bids. They have 3 bids.
They
in
do have
hand.
3 bids?
They haven't decided which one they will pursue, but they feel the best about the quality of work proposed in the one that they presented, and so I think they're leaning toward that bid. And then what was the other thing? We have proposed $50, which is $10,000 above the
50,000.
yeah, the 40,000 cap per project. Usually projects only get 20 grand in a year, but we feel the significance of the smokestack is huge. And so for that reason, staff recommends funding this at a slightly higher level. And then Peerless is also developing, the Johnson Creamery project, and they're working in partnership with Hand for the historic preservation requirements of that building. So they're doing window replacement and making other historically appropriate improvements, but we're sort of only looking at the smokestack for them as a project. So I think that's it from me.
Are the 3 bids you got, thanks for being here, by the way. The total facade cost is $350,000. Is that in line? I don't know when this was completed and you got 3 bids. Is that accurate still?
The lowest one is 310,000. The middle one is 326,000. And then the one from Gerard, who has been most involved in the project thus far, is at 350,000. And that does not include that previously mentioned engineering report, which was an additional 20,000.
Okay, thank you.
What's the timing on the project?
We're still working with AT&T on that, but we are told that they should be ready to have their commission or their equipment decommissioned at the end of July. And work could start shortly after that.
I'm just going to say, I know you have to leave soon. I feel like this is very rushed, and it's a lot of, it's our entire facade budget. And I guess I just feel like this is going to warrant more discussion, I think, on my end.
It's a lot of money to
Yeah.
me too, so.
I just wanted to put that out there.
So,
Thank you.
I mean, I don't know what the formal motion is, but Peerless, I think the board is open to it, but wants more and now time to analyze and discuss the
Right.
nuances. So I think it's possible, if the board wants to discuss at the July meeting, to reimburse whatever if they decide to approve whatever they decide.
Well, I don't think we want to give the impression that we're going to reimburse, but.
But I'm saying the way the grant functions, it can function as it functions as a reimbursement grant. So
Right,
if they
right.
continue with the work, that doesn't that doesn't impact their eligibility.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a lot of money, and I think we just need some more information, because when I first looked at it, I was like, $350,000 to take down that seems like a lot of money, so, and I'm glad you got 3 bids, so.
So Mary, I think that relieves you of your duties today.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And
Mary.
then I think,
Bye, Mary, thank you.
Julie, it's 12:51, so I think for the rest of the board, that's up to you if you want to continue discussing, or.
So we're tabling this for right now, correct? Do we need?
That's up to you
Yeah,
guys.
yeah, I think that's what we need to do.
I'm okay with that.
So-
What's your time frame? I mean, clearly the beeline is closed and has been for a little
Right,
while,
right.
and that's disruptive, for sure, to the larger community. We don't meet again for another month. And so,
Well, right now we are, we're trying to line up the funding for this work. And this is, we're hoping a component of that funding. Right now, we're also trying to wrap up some of the funding in a potential construction loan, but we don't know if that project is gonna be able to move forward pending, an alley or right-of-way vacation. So that's not looking like that's gonna move forward. So at this point, we are kind of scrambling to find funding. So the sooner we know, the better, because we're gonna be having to go to, potentially private lenders, to get the rest of the money to pay for this project.
I just hate being if we're the organization holding up getting the.
But it doesn't sound like we are.
I don't think we are, but
We
that's
aren't
my
the only-
question.
Yeah, we aren't the only one.
We don't want to, we don't necessarily, my personal opinion is, I don't think I want to be holding that up, but we have to be able to go through our board and really talk about spending that. It is a really large request, so that was why I asked you that question.
I do think that next month, would be fine. It might delay our start by a couple of weeks, but we're not talking about a major delay at that point.
Okay.
Awesome, thanks.
Thank you very
Good.
much. Thank you, and thanks for being here too,
Yeah.
so.
Of
So-
course, thank you.
Okay, I'll send you all an invite for the next meeting. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Gloria.
Thank you.
Yeah, take care, Lisa.
Thanks.
Is there additional information that we need to tell Jane that we would like to have?
I could review my own notes, but I just forget if Peerless wanted the smokestack to be designated historic or not. Like, did they were they hoping they could demo it, or were they, I forget.
They have the COA for it.
Yes, and I know it got, I guess you all can answer your back. I just don't remember if you all were advocating to designate it as historic or hoping that that wouldn't happen.
Ultimately, we didn't want the smokestack to be, let's say, conflicting or causing any issues with the proposed plan. And a lot of the, I guess, contention around it was how we were going to draw the boundary lines of the historic district. For us, we do view it as an important structure. We sort of wanted feedback from the community on whether or not the remaining 60 feet would be important, because there was an increased cost to keep and restore a portion of it, even the 60-foot portion, versus doing a full demolition. So we were open to either path.
Thank you.
That is an interesting point. So it isn't money just to take it down. It's also, as I read here, money to then water seal, remortar, restore, put in a whole new lining on what you leave there.
The 60 feet that'll stay.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
That's correct. Yeah, there's restoration component in that bit as well.
So, but it might not be designated historic as to how you draw your lines around there. Is that correct? Is that what I'm understanding?
It is designated historic.
It got designated.
Okay, it did. Okay. Okay. All right.
I just want to ask this again, I'm sorry, but I thought when we were going through this at city council, I don't remember an option that did not designate the smokestack as historic. I'm sorry, that was too negative. So I thought we were only looking at either including the entire parking lot or not, but I thought the smokestack was in both of them, and that you all proposed the historic designation without the parking lot, which I agreed with because the parking lot is not historic. But I guess I thought the smokestack was never up for debate in the historic designation discussion.
It was pretty much always included in the boundary from our standpoint.
Okay.
It was up for discussion, not really debate, as to whether or not, the public or the general consensus was that the remaining 60 foot should be preserved. They were saying if the consensus was no, we'd rather not have that. It's going to be a sad reminder, right? Then it could have been eliminated from the map. But the general consensus was pretty clear that even keeping some portion of it was valuable.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
So the arts grants will also put off until the next meeting?
Takes a vote, it had to be, so we
Yeah.
don't have a quorum.
Yeah, we don't have a quorum anymore. So.
I was looking at that when she said she was leaving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's fine. We can put the arts grants off.
Okay.
So, all right. Do you want to do the director's report, Jane?
I think so. There are just a few items on the director's report, and this is not approved. It's sort of just FYI. So I talked with Tracy Gates last month and asked if she felt like she was going to be able to participate more in the BUEA coming up, and she regretted that she didn't think she was going to be able to, which is completely understandable, running her regular busy business and then adding a new location. It's really hard to get away, and I think she felt bad, but I feel grateful that she was able to support the BUEA for, I think, at least 2 years, if not longer.
COVID time.
I know, COVID times.
Yeah.
So that's been really great to have her, but unfortunately that means we have a board spot open, and there has been interest. Multiple people have reached out about the BUEA and wanting to get involved. So I think that's nice.
And zone businesses.
zone businesses, actually, and residents too. Unfortunately, it's really hard to fill that resident spot for not a Democrat in Bloomington. So I haven't had any success, but I've had a lot of conversations. So I believe Felisa Spinelli, who is the owner of B-Town Beauty Supply, which has been operating in the zone for 16 years, has applied through the council office, and we're waiting to find out about that. So I think she's been very engaged on different issues and trying to do some community building within her business community, like sort of more on the south side of the zone. So I think that is an assignment that we receive, but I just wanted to communicate about it. That was one item. So mainly, the main takeaway there is a big thanks to Tracy for her service. The grant management software is still not up yet, but Chaz is making good progress. And I wanted to report that we have exhausted our zone resident scholarship funds. So they haven't gone out yet. I'm paying scholarships tomorrow. But
That's good.
yeah, it's good. I think our budget line is small
Right.
for that.
And we can relook at that next year.
But I have been, I know we haven't had huge marketing push, but I've been communicating about it in different avenues, and I think that's where people are coming through. And
That's
there
what
are,
we want.
yeah,
We want the
yeah, and
BUA's
so
name to
there
get
are
out there.
Professionals pursuing training, non-traditional students. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff happening there. So that's that. Marketing assistant. I think Larry's still on here. Chaz and I are still working on that, and I think we're sort of in a holding pattern while we await information on how to handle the RFP process. So I'm sorry that hasn't happened yet. And then the last item is the rapid response loan status. I sort of touched on that in financials, but I've had a hard time getting response from the servicer that I had sort of pre-selected. So we're really behind schedule at this point in getting the servicing up and running. So in the interim, Office of the Controller has requested that we start receiving installment payments directly. So they think we'll do that for 2 months before we have the servicing up and running. So that's a challenge. Yeah, but Controller's office seems to think that it's not a big deal to do it this way. So I guess the BUA could, if you guys disagree, I mean, you can do whatever you want, really.
Right.
So that might be.
You just become the bank at that point in time.
I know, and we were really hoping not to have to get involved in any of the administrative aspects of that.
So what's the plan after 2 months?
That the servicing will be up and running.
Okay.
But again, I had selected a servicer called CRF, I think it's Community Resource Fund out of Minneapolis, who had come recommended from Brian Payne. And then my intern at the time and I had looked at proposals from, I think, 4 different CDFI servicers, and then one just turnkey app that you could purchase that was more expensive and had too many bells and whistles for what we needed. So I really thought we were there, but I'm afraid we might have to go to number 2 or 3. I'm just having so much trouble getting response from CRF. So that's that status. The flip side of that is that I think it's really a hard time for businesses. Some businesses are paying in full because they don't want to pay the city any interest, which is understandable. And then other borrowers have communicated that they are really in a new level of challenge with COVID recovery, that the current economic climate with inflation and labor costs being so high, with costs of fuel, supply chain challenges, this is just a really awful time to be in business. And with Bloomington, it hits while the students are out of town too. So people are very uncomfortable. They're very nervous about having to make payments. The people I'm talking to. But then again, there are a handful of companies who are ready to pay just to get out of the debt. So mixed bag. Okay, that's it for my director's report. Do you all have questions about any of those?
I have one follow-up question. Jane, thanks for that. That's always interesting. You mentioned that the zone resident scholarships were depleted. And so the 10,500 that we budgeted?
Yeah, I've approved that many, but
Okay.
I haven't paid out that many.
Okay.
And they go in 2-part increments.
Uh-huh.
So I kind of think it depends how we want to do the math, but I think technically these people have applied for the full amount, and I anticipate that that's
Right.
what will go out.
So I just wonder, and this would be a discussion for another meeting, if our budget of 10,500 is just not appropriate anymore, and if we want to, given that it's not a complete 6 months of the year, if we don't want to entertain opening that up a little bit more for the rest of this year, given the assets that we have of, 2.36 million
Right.
in cash, which leads to the next question, which is we talked about, and I know there isn't a lot of time to do this, but I think I raised before something that looks maybe into the future a little bit, like 5 years out. What happens to our cash balance given if we did X, Y, and Z? So to say we already spent all the resident scholarship money, we haven't even completed 6 months, can we increase that this year and spend more because we have so much there? Seems doable with 2.36 million, but if it was a larger amount, it's hard to know because
Right.
if we don't have like a projection of our cash and where we're going to end up. And I think we talked about maybe, and they may not be available during the summer, but the consultants out of Kelly.
Yeah.
But just to kind of look at that, because even the $50,000 facade grant, it's way bigger than what we usually do, but I know we're not supposed to be just sitting on a gigantic nest egg.
Right.
And we should be activating the money, and it's just hard to make those decisions without knowing like how much could we actually spend.
And I apologize, I haven't taken any action with Kelly, but I think that's the right group to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just let their junior math nerds do all that processing for us and
Or
see.
they can kind of give us a long-term.
Yeah.
But I think there's a different question that's buried in there, which has to do with strategic planning and what you guys, what the board wants for the future of.
Well, and we also think that we potentially have quite a bit more cash coming in because of the eases for.
Right.
Yeah.
And I agree with the strategic planning question. And when I've been involved in that, that's a very long process. And I really wouldn't want to put that before just getting an idea of whether or not we can even entertain $50,000 or increase our resident scholarship budget, like double it this year or whatever we need to do. So if they were to do some planning, I would personally recommend that they just do it based on what we've been doing.
Okay.
And then we could do a strategic plan about what we want to do, but at least get a foothold on where we sit. If we keep doing what we're doing year over year, what are we going to look like in 5 years, given as money coming in, money going out?
And so if I reach out this summer, I could see the BUEA getting a report back, but probably not till later in the fall semester. Would that be okay with you guys?
Yeah, that's fine.
Because it's we just don't have the people power to do it ourselves. So I think if that's okay with you guys, I think that sounds like a good plan. What was the other thing I was going to say? I think that's it.
And if you do meet with them and want any board, participation or whatever, I'll throw my name in. I'd be happy to meet with them.
Yes, that was my question I was
Just
going to ask. Would you help me refine my research question that okay.
That'd be great.
All right.
Because I'd like to spend more on resident scholarships.
Yeah, well, no, and that's
I kind of
with
like
with our assets that makes some sense. So.
Right. And I guess, and we can't vote on it now, but I'd certainly like to add that conversation to the July agenda.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I think that would be good, and there are no parameters, right? Anyone in the zone, living in the zone can apply.
Yeah, they have to have lived here for a year.
That's it, okay.
So they can't move in
once, right?
Right, and there's
In a lifetime.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
I wonder if they become so popular, or if we might want to look at, I don't know, some other parameters potentially, or criteria for eligibility. Mm-hmm.
I think that makes a lot of sense because I'm trying to think how to phrase this in the right way. Sometimes I think people are just well networked and they know how to ferret money out of the system.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think sometimes those are the people who apply for the scholarships. That's not what I'm seeing this year, but I definitely feel like I have seen that in the past records. And so I also, just putting my personal cards on the table, my husband teaches at North, and he teaches a senior Common Core English class full of smart kids, many of whom don't have, college educated parents, and they're coming from households maybe living on the hill, having some stability challenges at home, but smart kids who don't have often a way of knowing what's next for them, and they don't have a clear path to know like how you even get into an Ivy Tech class, let alone how you pay for it. So I did make a trip to North to talk to their guidance department about this scholarship program, and by the time she was ready to post it, we had already approved the funding, so that's kind of DOA. But I like the idea of narrowing the parameters in some way that kind of prioritizes people who have greater need.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think part of what's great about the program is that it's super low barrier.
Right. So,
Yeah, you do get into then having to determine, there's work behind determining need.
Mm-hmm.
Although if there's students in MCCSC, that's pretty easy to do
yeah.
with free and reduced lunch qualifications.
Yeah. There's a great program called Beyond 12 that I should just communicate with about via email that helps. It's established in different parts of the country. We don't have one in Indiana, but they really take at-risk kids and guide them. Because kids go from having this totally built-in support system, food, mental health, emotional support in the school, and then it disappears overnight. And Beyond 12 kind of tries to scoop in and provide that infrastructure where the school systems leave off to get people through this. It's a challenging time. Their frontal lobes are still not fully developed.
Sure.
They're not adulting yet. So I don't know. There's a lot of good work that I think the BUEA could support kind of in that area. Okay.
All right, that's the director's report. Any unfinished business that we don't have to vote on anything?
No, I think I communicated everything
Yeah.
that I have.
All right. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
All right.